Aban Yast. The Aban Yast, or Yast of the waters, is devoted to the great female entity of the waters, the celebrated Ardve Sura Anahita, the Anaitis of the Greeks. Why not talk about Anath or some the Persians or something? But Ardve Sura Anahita, the high, powerful, undefiled, is the heavenly spring from which all waters on the earth flow down. Her fountains are on the top of the mythical mountain, the Huka Iria, in the star region. Her descent from the heavens is described in 85. It reminds one of the Indian legend of the celestial Ganga, the Ganges. The Yazt contains much valuable information about the historical legends of Iran, as it enumerates the several heroes who worshipped Ardve Sura and asked for her help. First of all is Ahura himself. Then came Ha'ashyanga, verse 21 mentions that. Yima, verse 25 mentions that. Azadahaka, verse 29 mentions that. Thra-e Ta'ana, verse 33 mentions that. Keres Aspa, verse 37 mentions that. Fran Gracian, verse 41 mentions that. Kava Usa, verse 45 mentions that. Husrava, verse 49 mentions that. Tusa, verse 53 mentions that. Asaka's sons, verse 57 mentions that. Vafra, Navaza, verse 61 mentions that. Gamaspa, verse 68 mentions that. Asha Vazda, the son of Pauru Takste, and Asha Vazda and Threta, the sons of Sa Yuzdre. Verse 72 mentions that. Vistauru, verse 76 mentions that. Yoista, verse 81 mentions that. The Havovas and the Naotaras, verse 98 mentions that. Zarathustra, verse 103 mentions that. Kava Vistaspa, verse 107 mentions that. Zaere Vaere, verse 112 mentions that. Arigat Aspa and Von Dar M A Ene, verse 116 mentions that. This enumeration is given by a description of the descent of Ardve Sura from heavens, 85 to 89, and of certain rules for her sacrifice, given by herself to Zarathustra, 90 to 97. This interruption may have been intentional, as it takes place just when the course of the enumeration brings us to the times of Zarathustra and the end of the institution of the new religion. The Yast is opened with the laudation of the benefits bestowed by Ardve Sura, verse 1 through 16, and closes with the description of her garments and apparel. The first record of the worship of Ardve Sura is in a cuneiform inscription by Artaxerxes Nemon, lines 404 to 361, in which her name is corrupted into Anahata. Well, you could say perhaps some of that came first. Artaxerxes Memnon appears to have been an eager promoter of her worship, as he is said to have first erected the statues of Venus, Anahita, in Greek, Aphroditas, or Anaetidas in Babylon, Susa and Ecbatana, and have taught her worship to the Persians, the Bactrians, and the people of Damas and Sardis. Clemens Alexandrius Protrepit 5 on the authority of Berossus, about 260 BCE. So remember, just like the Catholics, all these things we worship as saints, and adding more as it goes on, as what they call Zoroastrianism was incorporating new lands with the kings that were over them. The things worshipped as gods and goddesses, or at least the angels that were, the angel worship and all that sort of stuff built up as time went on. It's basically my point. My friend M. Aleva suggests to me that the detailed and circumstantial description of Anahita's appearance and costume in 126 to 131 shows that the writer must have described her from a consecrated type of statuary. Well, not necessarily. And again, that not quite to the extent of what they say about the about the Jews and stuff. But the graven images weren't part of the religion, so again, trying to implement some of the survivals from the other faiths that would have communicated in cuneiform and such. But let us go back here to the interruptions. Like, some of this linguistically, when you hear the originals, they're not interruptions. But, like, some of these texts that are claimed to be revealed, and some of them that are, there's some weird things that happen. Now, this could be like the part or whatever, but it's like in the Quran you have this rhyme and rhythm, and it doesn't, the subject could, it's like, I mean, why in the world is this here? But then you hear it and it's like, oh, but there's like this break, but part of it's still going along, and then it snaps back, and it's like, so these things are meant to affect people's lives. It's not just literary entertainment or just art. There's more to it than that. Anyways, the principal data of the Greek writers on Anahita will be found in Winditchman's essay De Persich Anahita Adur Anaitis of 1856 of the Bulgar era. One must be cautious in the use of the Greek sources, as the Greeks, with the eclectic turn of their mind, were inclined to confound under the name of Anahita all the great female beings called deities of Asia Minor, and her name became a common appellation for the Aphrodites as well as for the Artemides of the East. Well, the archetypes thing, but a lot of the archetypes aren't exact, so I have a book that has some of those Greek and Latin sources. I wish it had a translation, but I think it's largely untranslated, which is part of why I haven't shared it on the channel. It's like, you're saying a bunch of Greek stuff, and it's not as reliable as some of the other stuff you shared in the subject. So, and your translations are going to be choppy, but I'm working on it, people. 0. May Ahura Mazda be rejoiced. Asham, and so on. Asham Bohu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. I confess myself a worshipper of Mazda, a follower of Zarathustra, one who eats the Devas, and obeys the laws of Ahura, for sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification unto Havana, the holy and master of holiness, and so on, unto the good waters made by Mazda, unto the holy water, spring, Ardve, Anahita, unto all waters made by Mazda, unto all plants made by Mazda. We propitiation with sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification. Yata ahu va'iryo. The will of the Lord is the law of holiness, and so on. Part 1, verse 1 through 9. 1. Ahura Mazda spake unto Spitama Zarathustra, saying, Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, unto the spring of mine, Ardvisura Anahita, the wide expanding and health giving, who eats the Evas and obeys the laws of Ahura, who is worthy of sacrifice in the material world, worthy of prayer in the material world, the life increasing, and holy, the herd increasing, and holy, the fold increasing, and holy, the wealth increasing, and holy, the country increasing, and holy. 2. Who makes the seed of all males pure? Who makes the womb of all females pure for bringing forth? Who makes the females bring forth in safety? Who puts milk into the breast of all females in the right measure and the right duality? Did I say 2? With who makes the seed of all males pure? 3. The large river, known afar, that is as large as the whole of the waters that run along the earth, that runs powerfully from the height Hukairia down to the sea, Va'uru Kasha, all the shores of the sea, Va'uru Kasha, are boiling over. All the midst of it is boiling over. When she runs down there, when she streams down there, she, Ardvisura Anahita, who has 1,000 cells, at 1,000 channels, the extent of each of those cells, of each of those channels, is as much as a man can ride in 40 days, riding on a good horse. 5. From this river of mine alone flow all the waters that spread over all the 7 Karshvaras. This river of mine alone goes on bringing waters, both in summer and in winter. This river of mine purifies the seed in males, the womb in females, the milk in females' breasts. 6. I, Ahura Mazda, brought it down with mighty vigor for the increase of the house, of the borough, of the town, of the country, to keep them, to maintain them, to look over them, to keep and maintain them close. 7. Then Ardve Sura Anahita, O Spitama Zarathustra, proceeded forth from the maker Mazda. Beautiful were her white arms, thick as a horse's shoulder, or still thicker. Beautiful was her Zaosa. And thus came she, strong with thick arms, thinking thus in her heart. 8. Who will praise me, who will offer me a sacrifice with libations, cleanly prepared and well strained together, with the ha'ama and meat? To whom shall I cleave? Who cleaves unto me, and thinks with me, and bestows gifts upon me, and is of good will unto me. 9. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice worth being heard. I will offer up unto the holy Ardve Sura Anahita a good sacrifice with an offering of libations. Thus mayest thou advise us when thou art appealed to. Mayest thou be most fully worshipped, O Ardve Sura Anahita, with the ha'ama and meat, with the barisma, with the wisdom of the tongue, with the holy spells, with the words, with the deeds, with the libations, and with the rightly spoken words. Yenhe hat taram. All those beings of whom Ahura Mazda, and so on. 2 compromises, verses 10 and 11. 10. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitma Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Arve Sura Anahita, the wide expanding and health-giving, who waits the Da'evas and obeys the laws of Ahura, who is worthy of sacrifice in the material world, worthy of power, worthy of prayer in the material world, the life increasing and holy, the herd increasing and holy, the fold increasing and holy, the wealth increasing and holy, the country increasing and holy. 11. Who drives forward on her chariot, holding the reins of the chariot, she goes on driving on this chariot, longing for men, and thinking thus in her heart, who will praise me? Who will offer me a sacrifice, with libations cleanly prepared and well strained, together with the ha'ama and meat? To whom shall I cleave? Who cleaves unto me, and thinks with me, and bestows gifts upon me, and is of good will unto me? For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice, worth being heard. And are there words missing with this one? Talk about that later. 3 compromises, 12, 13, 14, and 15. 12. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitma Zarathustra, under the spring of mine, Ardve Sura Anahita, so on. 13. Whom 4 horses carry, all white, of one and the same color, of the same blood, tall, crushing down the hates of all haters, of the Da'evas and men, of the Yatus and Pa'evrikas, of the oppressors, of the blind, and of the deaf. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice. 14. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitma Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Ardve Sura Anahita, and so on. 15. Strong and bright, tall and beautiful of form, who sends down by day and by night a flow of motherly waters, as large as the whole of the waters that run along the earth, and who runs powerfully. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice. And so on. 5 compromises, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitma Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Ardve Sura Anahita, and so on. 17. To her did the Maker, Ahura Mazda, offer up a sacrifice, in the Aryana V'ega, by the good river Da'itya, with the ha'ama and meat, and the beresma, with the wisdom of the tongue, with the holy spells, with the words, with the deeds, with the libations, and with the rightly spoken words. 18. He begged of her a boon, saying, grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardve Sura Anahita, that I may bring the son of Paurushaspa, the holy Zarathustra, to think after my law, to speak after my law, to do after my law. 19. Ardve Sura Anahita granted him that boon, as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and begging that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice. And prayers and such be upon, not to. It's possible that we can put that sort of thing into this context, or take it, further back pre-Achaemenian and say that, well, it makes sense that would have been the case with the Magian period of the faith, because we really can't say much about pre-Magian. It was obvious that, at least linguistically, some contractions, some issues had appeared that made it clear. It seems like it could be older. It could be an older tradition than as old as the Parsis say it is. But see God communicating with, like in the Quran you have the Saleh, and people having it manifested, the teachings that they're supposed to exhibit, or the principles they're supposed to exhibit. It doesn't mean they're being worshipped as gods or something. Or 6. But there's some difficult things to express in few words when you're saying stuff in English, that they came up with words in other languages just to express this stuff succinctly. We have verses 20, 21, 22, and 23. 20. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Arve Sura Anahita, and so on. To her did Ashyanga, the Parvata, offer up a sacrifice on the enclosure of the Hara, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, and 10,000 lambs. 22. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardve Sura Anahita, that I may become the sovereign lord of all countries, of the Da'avas and men, of the Yachts and the Pa-Evrikas, of the oppressors, the blind, and the deaf, that I may smite down 2/3 of the Da'avas of Ma-Zana, and the fiends of Varena. 23. Ardvasura Anahita granted him that boon, as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice. 7. Compromising 24, 25, 26, and 27. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitma Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Arve Sura Anahita. 25. To her did Yima Kshaeta, the good shepherd, offer up a sacrifice. From the height, Hukka area, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 26. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardve Sura Anahita, that I may become the sovereign lord of all countries, of the Da'avas and men, of the Yatus and the Pa-Evrikas, of the oppressors, the blind, and the deaf, that I may take from the Da'avas both riches and welfare, both fatness and flocks, both weal and glory. 27. Ardvasura Anahita granted him that boon, as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice. 8. 28. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Ardvasura Anahita. 29. To her did Aza Dahaka, the three-mouthed, offer up a sacrifice in the land of Baure, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, and 10,000 lambs. 30. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this boon, O good, most beneficent Ardvasura Anahita, that I may make all the 7 Karshvaras of the earth empty of men. 31. Ardvasura Anahita did not grant him that boon, although she was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating her that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. 9 compromises 32, 33, 34, and 35. 32. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, unto Ardvasura Anahita, and so on. 33. To her did Thra-e-Ta'ana, the heir of the valiant Athwiya clan, offer up a sacrifice in the four-cornered arena, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 34. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardvasura Anahita, that I may overcome Azadahaka, the three-mouthed, the three-headed, the six-eyed, who has 1,000 senses, that most powerful, fiendish Droog, that demon, baleful to the world, the strongest Droog that Engram Inu created against the material world to destroy the world of the good principle, that I may deliver his 2 wives, Savan Ravak and Erenavak, who are the fairest of body amongst women, and the most wonderful creatures in the world. 35. Ardve Sura Anahita granted him that boon, as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. The Mazda Yasna Mazda Yasnian, however it's said in whatever language, seems to be abrogated with here. At the worship, the treating as a god, the celebrating, the singing are all for Ahura Mazda. Then what's, yes, we know there's qualities, and we know these qualities through certain beings and material forces, but they're sort of the means you pray to God, and God, whatever, is, if you're going to follow that paradigm. But as I pointed out, that Achaemenian period and some of the later periods, like the Sassanian, and 8 compromises 36, 37, 38, and 39. 36. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitima Zarathustra, and Ardve Sura Anahita. 37. To her did Keras Aspa, the manly-hearted, offer up a sacrifice behind the Va'ere Visana, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 38. He begged of her a boon, saying, grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardve Sura Anahita, that I may overcome the golden-heeled Gan Darawa through all shores of the sea Va'urukasha are boiling over, that I may run up to the stronghold of the fiend on the wide round earth, whose ends lie afar. 39. Ardve Sura Anahita granted him that boon, as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. 11. 40. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitima Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Ardve Sura Anahita, and so on. 41. To her did the Turanian murderer, Fran Gracian, offer up a sacrifice in his cave under the earth, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 42. He begged of her a boon, saying, grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardve Sura Anahita, that I may seize hold of that glory that is waving in the middle of the sea Va'uru Kasha, and that belongs to the Aryan people, to those born and those not yet born, and to the holy Zarathustra. Aryan as in like the 5 tribes that became what we call Hindus and Iranians or Persians, because that one tribe kind of did extend down to the Persian Gulf, and 42. Ardve Sura Anahita did not grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory, I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. 12 compromises 44, 45, 46, 47. 44. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitima Zarathustra, under this spring of mine, Ardve Sura Anahita, and so on. 45. To her did the great most wise Kava Usa offer up a sacrifice from Mount Erez Ifya, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 46. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Arvesura Anahita, that I may become the sovereign lord of all countries, of the Davas and men, of the Yatus and Pairikas, of the oppressors, the blind, and the deaf. 47. Arvesura Anahita granted him that boon as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. 13 compromises 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55. 48. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, unto this spring of mine, Ardvesura Anahita. 49. To her did the gallant Husrava, he who united the Aryan nations into one kingdom, offer up a sacrifice behind the Ka Ekasta lake, the deep lake of the salt waters, with 100 male horses, 1,000 oxen, 10,000 lambs. 50. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Ardvesura Anahita, that I may become the sovereign lord of all countries, of the Evas and men, of the Yatus and the Pairikas, of the oppressors, the blind, and the deaf, that I may have the lead in front of all the teams, and that he may not pass through the forest, he, the murderer, who now is fiercely striving against me, on horseback. 51. Arvesura Anahita granted him that boon as he was offering libations, giving gifts, sacrificing, and entreating that she would grant him that boon. For her brightness and glory I will offer her a sacrifice, and so on. 52. Offer up a sacrifice, O Spitama Zarathustra, unto this spring of mine, Ardvesura Anahita, so on. It says Sara here. I'm sure it means Sura. 53. To her did the valiant warrior Tusa offer worship on the back of his horse, begging swiftness for his teams, health for his own body, and that he might watch with full success those who hated him, smite down his foes, and destroy at one stroke his adversaries, his enemies, and those who hated him. 54. He begged of her a boon, saying, Grant me this, O good, most beneficent Arvesura Anahita, that I may overcome the gallant sons of Saka by the castle Kshatro Saaka, that stands high above the lofty, holy Kanga, that I may smite of the Turanian peoples their 50s and their hundreds and their thousands and their tens of thousands, their tens of thousands and their myriads of myriads. 55.